This is TalkSport Extra Time. My name is Mike Graham. It's a very sad day, but we're going to try and cheer Mr. Mike Parry up. He's just arrived in the studio. He's very upset about what happened at the weekend, and I just wanted to share my sympathy with what happened at the Etihad. I'm terribly sorry for your loss.
At the Etihad?
Sorry, at the Emirates.
At the Emirates. So we'll get that right, shall we? Just to start off with, yes? So you've been plotting this revenge against me for the last 48 hours.
I've been talking about the Etihad, that's why I got confused.
For the last 48 hours, and now
I got confused.
And now you can't even get it right because you're so consumed with your desire to try and rub at my nose. Well, let me tell you this, MG.
Yeah, Mike.
When you...
we called it two Mikes. It's not that hard to remember.
If you can't remember the name of the stadium which Everton were playing in on Saturday,
you can't make a slip of the tongue.
Then I'm entitled to forget your name. Your name is insignificant, Everton or not. Now then, Can I tell you, I'm not particularly upset. I mean, obviously, I'd love to still be in the FA Cup because I believe that the winner of the Arsenal-Everton tie now have a great opportunity to go on and win the FA Cup.
I have to say, and no disrespect to any of the teams that are left in the FA Cup, but if you look at the four teams left in the semi-final, I mean, Arsenal kind of stand out like a sore thumb,
Of course they do. And my campaign to try and introduce seeding into the last 8 of the FA Cup over all these years now bears fruit because it's a non-competition now. Do you honestly think that the worldwide audience is going to stand back in amazement and say, oh, fantastic, Arsenal versus Sheffield United or Hull in the final of the FA Cup?
It's going to be great for the fans, of course, of either of those teams to get to Wembley to play Arsenal.
It's our national competition.
And everyone's going to have some hope of beating them after what happened with Birmingham.
Of course they are. You're absolutely right there. Now then...
now, just before you move on, so I know you want to move on very quickly away from this whole Everton story.
No, I don't.
You said to me on Thursday night, last time you were here, that you were a bit concerned about the lack of tickets being made available to Everton fans. We explained to you that apparently Arsenal say, not just because of Everton fans, but because of a lot of visiting fans, because of the pyrotechnics that go on, they didn't want to give too many tickets away. Now, I remember seeing it out there on social media on Saturday afternoon when Everton scored. There was loads and loads of blue smoke going out.
I put out a tweet myself with a picture of it. I was very proud because the blue smoke was circulating around the Emirates.
Where was the blue smoke coming from?
It's coming from pyrotechnics, which had obviously erupted in the Everton fans, whom I was amongst.
So they brought some kind of blue smoke bomb in?
Yeah, blue smoke bomb, but it wasn't explosive. It wasn't designed to hurt anybody. It was just a bit of blue smoke.
That's why they got fewer seats. That's the point.
Well, look, I can't explain that. Point is, at least I have something to believe in. That is Everton Football Club. You have nothing to believe in, and there is not
the sort of nothing to believe in.
Well, you know, this ridiculous facade of you supporting Brentford.
I do support Brentford.
Nonsense. Yeah.
It's not nonsense.
Who do they play on Saturday, Brentford?
I can't tell you that. I was very busy this weekend.
Yeah, but
very busy indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, listen, there's not a crisis at Everton. And if you're an Evertonian, obviously you're disappointed. 33 points to play for the rest of the season.
Yes.
But
so what would Everton's kind of contact be in terms of where they want to finish? 5th or 6th or 7th?
We want to finish as high as we possibly can with 33 points. You can't predict that. But the point is, we shouldn't be talking about Everton. We should be talking about the crisis club in the Premier League, which is Spurs. Now, who was
why is Spurs the crisis club?
I'll tell you, I'm just about to explain to you.
Telling you Manchester City's the crisis club.
Well, City could rescue that because I was reading an expert called Anthony Kastrinakis.
Oh, yeah.
Who's the... He's the guy who writes for The Sun on worldwide football and all that kind of stuff, OK? And he says that actually City have got a great opportunity to refresh their season by going to Barcelona and getting a result because Barcelona really are on the wane. Barcelona's last 6 games...
We keep hearing they're on the wane, but they didn't look much like they were on the wane when they played the first leg.
Yeah, lost to Valencia... won against Seville, won against Vallecano, then lost to Sociedad, won against Almeria, but lost at the weekend to Valladolid. Right, so that could be a problem. Valladolid. So anyway, look, so that means that your theory that Manchester City are the crisis club has yet to be tested this week.
Listen, I would be more than happy to see Manchester City beat Barcelona. I was the one that was saying I thought they could beat Barcelona over 2 legs, but then they just didn't turn up against them in the first one.
Yes. Anyway, get back to Spurs, right? Because you had some chap in this studio early on, bit of a dolt from the sound of what he was saying.
Yeah.
Toby.
He's a bit slow.
Who was going on and trying to sort of criticise and barrack Tim Sherwood. Now, this is absolute and utter nonsense. Tim Sherwood has turned out to be the strongest-minded manager in the Premiership. He speaks his mind. He launches into his players because he knows his players are not putting the work rate in for him. They're not defending him. And, more particularly, he launches into the board. I mean, his comment...
That's dangerous times, that, isn't it, though?
Well, that's why I think he's a very brave man. I think he knows he's going to go. I think he knows that the 18-month contract was on the basis of, 6 months of work and then 12 months payoff.
Right.
Geoffrey Levy... No, it's not Geoffrey Levy. He's a journalist on the Express, on the Mail, rather.
Yeah, feature writer.
Daniel Levy is once again creeping around the edges, trying to make out he's an internet...
I just realised, now you call Tim Sherwood Steve.
No, I don't.
And you call Daniel Levy Geoffrey.
Well, Geoffrey's an old friend of mine, actually. I've known him for about 40 years.
Indeed.
No, not that long. 30, maybe. But anyway, point of my story is this.
Now, this is another thing I've got to raise with you, because an awful lot of people have said this to me
on
all sorts of different platforms. Yeah. Why does Mike Parry keep saying the point of my story is this? You say it, I kid you not, about 10 times in the course of half an hour.
Well, because
what is the point of that?
You keep interrupting me, so I have to keep making my point. Right, let's move on.
Yeah.
Now,
let's talk about Geoffrey and Steve.
Daniel Levy, creeping around the edges and trying to make out that he's international negotiator. I mean, he's only ever appointed one manager who's won in one League Cup, who he sacked a few months later. Yeah. He goes around making out that he's international wheeler-dealer. He only sanctioned £107 million for players last summer.
Yeah.
And how many of those 7 players played last Saturday?
Well, I mean,
none.
This is the big problem, isn't it?
No, it's none. It was 0.
This is the big problem now, though, because half of them are out injured and the other half can't seem to play with each other.
And they're all unsaleable. You can't sell them now because they've been found out to be useless in the Premier League, so you have to sell them.
But is that his fault
cheaply.
Or is it the other guy's
fault? Mr. Levy appointed the 2 men who spent all that money, and that was AVB and the
Italian.
The Italian guy, Franco Baldini, who's supposed to be a director of football. Yeah. So Mr. Levy has to take all...
And this allegedly is the cause of all the tension, isn't it, between Tim Sherwood and the board, because Baldini's kind of in the middle of it all.
Of course it is. So anyway, Tim Sherwood says deafening silence from the board. Mr. Levy apparently didn't even bother going to the game on Saturday. Massive game against Chelsea, didn't bother going. Tim said, well, I didn't know whether he was here or not. And I see in a report in tomorrow morning's Telegraph, Levy moves to end unrest at Spurs. Chairman planning talks with angry Sherwood. Club to sell gutless players and Vertonghen may leave. Vertonghen.
Isn't that something you take for indigestion?
Vertonghen. Now, Daniel Levy...
Sanatogen, sounds like.
Just shut up and listen for a minute.
OK, don't be rude.
Right. Daniel Levy is attempting to stop Tottenham Hotspur's season finishing in disarray. Well, I think it already is in disarray.
Well, it's not really in disarray, is it? I mean, they're still win with a chance of getting 5th, aren't they?
Oh, what a nonsense. In massive disarray by breaking his deafening silence with Tim Sherwood. Although Levy is expected to appoint a new manager in the summer, the job Sherwood is doing as head coach has been appreciated by the Spurs chairman and members of the club's board. Well, in that case, why don't they give him more support? Tim Sherwood's a brave man. Tim Sherwood's a bold man. He's a young man of only 47 years of age.
You're not that young.
Who's trying to impose some sort of will on a club which for years and years and years has been in a state of footballing self-delusion. Spurs...
What are you talking about?
Spurs are the football club equivalent of a schizophrenic patient in a hospital for those who don't know their minds, OK? And I'm very sorry for people who don't know their minds.
Yeah, I would be sorry for them.
But Spurs is a football club that doesn't know its mind. And Mr. Levy, what I don't get about Mr. Levy is this. He's actually not the chairman of a club that he owns. He's not chairman because he's got a major shareholding. He's an employed chairman.
Right.
He's employed by old Joe Bananas. What's his name?
Joe Bananas.
Joe Lewis.
Yeah.
Joe Lewis, OK? No disrespect to you, Mr. Lewis.
Who lives in the Caribbean, I believe.
No, it's further south. It's Bahamas.
No, the Bahamas.
Yeah, and
you sure that's further south?
Further north. And my point is this: why doesn't Mr. Lewis suddenly look to where the real problem is at Spurs? And the real problem is appointing a chairman who goes around, strutting around like a peacock, making out that he's the arch negotiator in the world of football. But he keeps actually negotiating a bum deal after bum deal after bum deal.
Well, he did pretty well with Gareth Bale, you'd have to say. He got a lot of money for Gareth Bale.
But he sold Gareth Bale and he replaced him with £107 million worth of players who are no blinking good. That's my point.
Well, that's fair enough.
When Everton played at Spurs, I went up to see Mr. Kenwright after the game.
Did you?
Mr. Kenwright's a friend of mine, yes.
Oh, yeah, you ran into Mr. Levy, didn't you?
Well, the point
you
is,
called him Geoffrey.
No, he gave me the evil, deadly stare in the boardroom. I walked in, I didn't barge in. I said to the guy on the door, "Hello, hello, mate. We know you. You've seen you here before." Mr. Kenwright, yes.
This is before we saw Steve on the way out, presumably.
Tim.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I went in. Anyway, I went in. I saw some people there from Everton. They said, "Oh, chairman's gone a minute or two ago and out that door there. I said, oh, OK.
He didn't wait for you,
well, no, I didn't ask him to wait for me. And
were any of your lovey mates there?
Mr. Levy gave me the real deadly stare, like, what are you doing in my boardroom? Because he knows I have been a critic in the past over the way he runs Spurs, because he runs it badly.
Well, he also probably thinks there's been one or two incidents when you've been at White Hart Lane that he doesn't want to have repeated in the boardroom area.
No, he runs it badly, and I'll tell you why he runs it badly, because he's trying to make out that Spurs are going to be a great European power under his tutelage. He's going to rebuild this fantastic new stadium. They're going to have, 60,000 people there a week, which they could have, I suppose. They've got a long waiting list for fans and all that. But what I don't understand is, when is he going to turn round and accept the blame for being a fantasist in terms of football chairman and his aspirations
Don't you
for
think
his
he's
club?
just a bit unlucky?
No, he's not unlucky. He's incompetent. And what I'm saying is this. I'm saying that to Mr. Levy, only an exotic European name is good enough to fill the manager's chair. So when he actually gets a decent manager...
That's why all these Dutch people are hanging around.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure it's true.
Van Gaal.
Van Gaal. So when he gets a decent manager like Harry Redknapp, who actually gets him into the top four, and it's not Harry's fault...
And the Champions League.
Well, they didn't, did they? The season before, of course they did. Yeah, but not that season, because Chelsea won the Champions League.
Yeah, and then
themselves.
he got the heave-ho, which was no fault of his own. Really.
No fault of his own, because Chelsea went on the most erratic and eccentric march through Europe to win the Champions League against the best team in Europe, who were Bayern Munich, and all of a sudden Harry's out the door.
Well, this is what I was saying earlier to one of the callers, that, the problem for Tottenham now is that no matter who comes in, the reputation that Daniel Levy's got is that he doesn't keep managers for very long.
But he doesn't keep managers for very long because he keeps appointing poor managers who he then has to sack. I mean, why did he appoint...
You can't tell me that Andrew Villas-Boas is a poor manager,
very poor manager. A very, very poor manager.
Did he not get Tottenham to get their highest points total of all time?
Yeah, but not the highest position. That was Harry Redknapp.
Yeah.
So it's all relative.
So you're saying it doesn't matter?
Of course it doesn't matter. But what I'm also saying is this. How did Mr. Levy, in his arrogance, think that as chairman of Spurs, he would appoint the man who was a blatantly useless reject at Chelsea? And if you're going to aspire to be alongside Chelsea in Champions League places, why appoint the manager who failed so badly at Chelsea that Mr. Abramovich was very happy to give him over 11 million quid to tell him to push off, and must have been laughing up his sleeve like this when he joined Chelsea, when he joined Spurs.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, if you were a Tottenham fan, I'd understand why you're so worked up about this, but you're not.
I just don't get it. I am, because Tim Sherwood's my friend. I'm standing up for him because I think that he's been given a really raw deal at Spurs. I think he's been left to hang out to dry. No support from the board. The players don't seem to want to play for him, and that's because...
And then he meets random people outside White Hart Lane who call him by the wrong name.
And that's because...
Poor guy.
And that's because there's all sorts of rumours floating around White Hart Lane that he'll be gone by the summer, and for that reason, the players have decided he is a lame duck.
A lame duck indeed. Mr. Mike Porky Parry will be back. I will be back too. The two Mikes. More next.
Today you and I are not the same. You say you like the sun, I like the rain.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. We are the two Mikes, of course. I have to say, Mike, I've never seen you so worked up about another team. And I can only conclude that this is some kind of massive smokescreen, blue or otherwise, to disguise your misgivings about Everton's performance on Saturday.
No smokescreen, and I want to move off Spurs. Just two thoughts before we do. Ian Wright has a column in a paper this morning. He supports Sherwood. He says he's been given a rough deal and not enough support from the board. And listen to this, just to prove what I've said is absolutely right.
Oh, yeah.
This is me tapping the table
now.
now.
I can hear that.
OK. Mauricio Pochettino is in advanced talks over a lucrative new contract at Southampton in an attempt to kill off potential interest from rival clubs, including Tottenham Hotspur.
Now, there's
this
a funny
summer.
thing.
Now, there's a funny thing. A foreign name being linked with Tottenham Hotspur, I ask you.
Yeah, well, that's certainly not proof, but it leads somewhere into your conspiratorial little mind. But let's talk about Everton for a moment, because I don't know who was in goal for Everton, but when I watched the game,
Robles.
I didn't recognise him. He didn't look like a gogoalkeeper. He didn't look like he wanted to be there. He looked a very nervous man.
I was immersed in the Everton fans behind that goal that we were we? I can't remember now.
What's happened to you now?
I'm trying to work out... Yes, that's right, the goal that we were defending in the first half, OK?
Yeah.
And what happened was, this guy Robles, I mean, we know of him. He's our reserve goalkeeper. I mean, he very rarely plays.
I've never seen him before.
Yeah. And we can't work out why he played, to be honest. But every ball that came into the area was a two-fisted punch.
Yeah.
you know, when he could, I mean, he did make 2 very good saves, which were instinctive shot-stopping saves, you see what I mean, where he couldn't have caught
Didn't have a
it.
chance to get his 2 fists together.
No, he didn't. And it was just one hand, one left and one right. He did okay there. But every time a ball came into the area, he went up with his 2 fists. He was punching the ball out. And sometimes he punched one onto the bar. I mean, I could have punched him.
Yeah.
Could have
I'm told
punched
he's
him.
from Spain, so his correct pronunciation of his name should be Robles.
Well, it's Robles, isn't it?
It's
You
not
know, that's as
Robles.
far as I know. Well,
Robles.
I'm calling him Robles. I don't care what you want to call him, you know.
Well, what I want to call him is, why were you there? Where was Tim Howard, anyway? Where was he playing?
Sorry, while we're out, what's the name of Brentford's goalkeeper on Saturday, do you know?
It was the guy, the hypnotist guy, wasn't it? I can't remember his name.
The hypnotist guy.
You know, the guy that came in and we talked to him, the guy who was...
you mad?
He was put under hypnosis, wasn't he?
You bonkers.
Yeah, I remember this from when we did the shows in the morning.
But you've no idea whether he was in goal on Saturday?
I can't remember.
No, of course you can't, because they don't even know
I've
what
got
the
to
team
keep
was.
an awful lot of information in my head.
You asked
right?
me about
I don't know
Tim
why-
Howard.
I don't know why you keep putting me on the spot about Brentford.
I don't know why...
I've told you that I have a long childhood association with Brentford, and I like to see how they get on. I do not go to their games because I have a very busy life. This weekend I had no time to do anything other than...
You don't go to games because going to watch Brentford would actually drive anybody to
Well,
despair.
I went to watch Brentford with you once, and they beat Everton
Unless
in the cup.
they're a
Remember
Brentford
that?
fan. Now,
Remember
you just
that?
asked me about...
You don't want to talk about that?
You just asked me about Tim Howard.
Yeah, where was Tim Howard? Why wasn't he playing?
I don't know, and we don't know why Tim wasn't playing. For some unknown reason,
Was he not even there?
Oh, yeah, of course he was there. He was sitting behind the manager. But what I'm
Has he
saying
still got
is...
the beard?
No, I don't think he has.
Has he got rid of that, has he?
From what I saw, I didn't have the beard. But the point I'm making is this. Tim Howard, I don't know why, I think Roberto, our manager, want to do a bit of rotation for someone.
So you'll say Roberto, but you won't say Robles.
Robles and Roberto.
Well, anyway, I'll tell you, I was reading a story about Tim Howard because he talks about, in finishing his time.
He's a great talker.
Finishes his time in England.
Highly intelligent man.
He is. He's a great guy, and he's when he finishes his career here in England, he's going to go back to America. He says the one thing he's going to take with him, which is a very good idea for his to take actually, is sticky toffee pudding. He says one of the favourite things that he's had ever since he's been in this country, sticky toffee pudding. You ever had sticky toffee pudding?
No, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But I've heard him talk about this before. Believe it or not, I met him, I think season before last or something, and he did say that one of the great things about England, the delicacy of, believe it or not, the sweets that are served in English restaurants.
Yeah.
Now, I said to him right away there and then, and I repeat this now, I don't know where he got this story from about his sticky toffee pudding this morning. Interesting, though, because I said, don't do it, Tim. I said, it is a killer. It is a killer in this country.
What is?
Puddings. We
have a very sweet tooth in this country, famously.
Well, the puddings we offer in this country, things like chocolate caramel pudding, sticky toffee pudding.
Chocolate caramel pudding?
Yeah. What's that stuff they put bananas in?
Banoffee pie?
Banoffee pie.
That's lovely, that.
Yeah. What's the stuff they put bananas in?
Banana cream pie?
No, banana split, is it? Or something like that?
They put bananas in that, yeah.
Yeah, but they put all sorts of creams over it.
Knickerbocker Glory?
Knickerbocker Glory. No, that's just ice cream. That's not bad. No, the other ones are these with load of suet in them. So, for instance, jam
suet.
Roly-poly.
Yeah.
Spotted Dick.
Yeah. These are all very old-fashioned things. Sticky toffee pudding is not really in that same category.
Yeah, but they shouldn't be served in this country.
Why not?
I would ban puddings. I never, ever eat a pudding. Do you?
You eat Battenberg cake?
Battenberg cake, a slice of with a cup of tea, maybe at 8 o'clock in the evening.
An entire Battenberg
as
cakes.
I'm watching a bit of Coronation Street or something, that's okay. But
in fact, there was a very funny remark on the social media website activity area over the course of the weekend,
yes.
where one of your many followers suggested that they might buy you a Battenberg cake, but they didn't want to because it sounded a bit like Clattenburg.
Yeah, he was the referee. Very funny that, very humorous, and
I thought it was very
laugh
good.
My socks off when I go home
How
tonight
can you
about
eat
that
Battenberg
one.
cake and then claim that all of these things are unhealthy?
No, they're terribly unhealthy. Honestly, Mike, I'm not joking. Now, look, all jokes aside, because I do have...
All jokes aside, you do have a condition that you should be very careful of.
I do have a certain respect for you.
Yeah.
You look at your body mass.
Yeah.
It doesn't need increasing.
No, it doesn't.
So I hope
I don't eat an awful lot of pudding.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You shouldn't. And by the way, you shouldn't let your kids. Your kids will turn out like little butterballs if you let them eat sticky toffee pudding all the time.
I don't let them eat sticky toffee pudding all the time. Where did you get this idea from?
I think it's a dangerous food. I think it's a killer food.
Rubbish.
I think it's...
Absolute rubbish.
No, it's far more dangerous than things like crisps, which kids can eat. It's far more dangerous than fizzy pop.
Do you know anything about saturated fats?
Saturated fats do not affect your heart. That has been absolutely proven over the last 6 or 8 months. New research shows saturated fat is actually good for you and it doesn't damage your heart. The things that damage your heart are the mass calorie...
Trans fats is what damages your heart.
Trans fats, that's
Trans
right.
fats.
Mass calorie...
In fact, in America, some places they've actually ruled against them, and they've actually put really, really high levels of tax on anything that's got trans fats in it.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't apply to puddings.
It certainly does.
It doesn't. It's fast food
The other thing,
type
the other
stuff.
thing is it can ruin your teeth.
Yeah.
Ruin kids' teeth, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they shouldn't be allowed.
The biggest problem for that, actually, is these little juice cartons, because everybody assumes, oh, well, you buy some orange juice, that's nice and safe for the kids. There's so much acidity in that it wipes the enamel off their teeth. I've seen some kids at my kid's school whose teeth are completely black.
No.
Yeah.
Black teeth?
Yeah, because
on a kid?
Yeah, because they've drunk so much of this, these cartons of juice. It's incredible.
You know, Rasputin had totally black teeth.
Did he?
Completely black teeth. And...
Why did he have black teeth?
Well...
Did he drink a lot of Ribena?
No. No, he had completely black teeth because he was a filthy peasant who never washed. No, it's true.
Well, I don't
true.
suppose they had electric toothbrushes in Rasputin's day.
No, they didn't. And I tell you what, Mate, you won't believe this.
I probably won't.
No, Catherine...
Tell me why again. He was a filthy peasant. Isn't that a bit sort of classist of you?
No, he was.
So he's such a snob.
No, he wasn't.
There's nothing wrong with being a peasant.
He was a filthy, penniless
why
peasant.
Why are you wiping your eyes?
Who I'm
your
not
eyes
wiping
okay?
my eyes.
You're blinking a lot again.
No, I tell you who was who had a full mouth of black teeth. No, seriously.
Yeah.
And I used to fancy her until I heard this. Marie Antoinette.
Marie Antoinette.
Marie Antoinette.
You used to fancy Marie Antoinette.
Yeah, of course did. Yeah, because
well, that's no doubt why she said let them eat cake. She'd obviously eaten too much of it.
That could be the case. Yeah, but she was mentioning that Queen song, wasn't she? You know, she's a killer queen. That's it. Now that's Marie Antoinette.
Is it?
Yeah. You think of the. You know, she keeps the Moet Chandon.
Yeah.
Chilling in a cabinet.
Let them eat cake, she said. Yeah, I guess it was,
cake.
Yeah.
And it rhymes with
teeth.
Marie Antoinette.
It didn't say anything about
she had a
having black
mouthful
teeth.
of black teeth.
Did she?
Mouthful of them. All the.
Why did you fancy historical character?
Well, because you think how exotic she must have been.
Most people had Raquel Welch on the wall.
This French mistress or whatever she was, and also all the king's mistresses in the Middle Ages and later in the Georgian times. They all had black teeth because nobody could work out what to do with teeth. You know that the
what would you do with teeth?
No. You know that the first false teeth came about when a soldier...
George Washington, wasn't it?
No.
He had wooden teeth.
No.
He made wooden teeth.
A soldier at the Battle of Waterloo, after he'd finished and all that, they weren't paying him. They didn't pay soldiers in those days. So he collected a load of teeth off the dead soldiers around him, took them back to England, knocked them into a bit of wood and started flogging them as false teeth.
That's a charming story. Is his name Parry, by any chance?
No.
He is Mike Parry. I'm Mike Graham. We are the two Mikes. More coming up next. TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. We are the two Mikes. So I know how excited you get when you play Beatles music.
Well,
so,
I do.
This is all part of the plan to try and cheer you up a bit. But it's also a way of me making a reference to something we saw in the papers over the weekend.
Indeed.
I don't know if you've ever heard of a bloke called Joey Essex.
Well, only because of this story you pointed out to me. And what a shocker, Mike.
He's from Towie. The Only Way is Essex, which I have to confess I've never watched.
I've never watched either.
No.
Do you know what? I don't even know.
It's quite a popular show with some other TalkSport presenters.
I don't even know what the concept of the show's all about. Some people try to describe it to me as a fictional show. Some say it's actually a reality show.
It is.
Some say it's a mixture of the two. How can you have a mixture of the two? These people living in cloud cuckoo land.
See, I think the problem with reality television is it's become a parody of itself because it's not any longer good enough just to say put a load of people in a big house together and call it Big Brother. Because what happens is as soon as you put them in the house, they all start playing some part or other, some acting part. They don't really play themselves, which is the whole point of it in the first place. I mean, if you were ever asked to go into the Big Brother house, you wouldn't have to put anything on. You'd just be yourself.
Well, I wouldn't go into it anyway.
Would you not?
No, of course not.
Not even for $100,000.
Well... Every man has his price.
Every man has his price. So what's yours?
I think J.R. Ewing said that. 250.
Yeah, he was a fictional character, by the way.
He was a fictional
before
character,
we get mixed up.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, let's go back to this guy, right? Joey Essex, it says here in this story, he fancies himself as the new Simon Cowell because he's just released an album. But he was asked if he could name the Beatles, and he could only name one of them.
No, he couldn't. He couldn't even name one. You read it properly, Mike. He said, I don't know. Then he ran through Henry, Mark, Bill, John. So he only got John because he was running through a list of names. See what I mean? But he didn't know.
Say John Lennon.
No, he didn't say John Lennon. He just said John. Now, the point is, people might think I'm obsessed by the Beatles.
You are?
Well, I'm a little bit. And some would say, well, OK, so how old is he, 18 or something? Or
something like
bit
that.
older?
He may be a bit
25,
older than that,
something like that.
He's in his early 20s.
All right, couldn't name the Beatles. Well, to me, that's as bad as not being able to name name the Prime Minister during the Second World War. To me, that's as bad as not being able to name the conqueror of Napoleon at Waterloo. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because surely
Did you not get that wrong last week?
No.
The conqueror of Napoleon at Waterloo.
No.
Because we had people arguing about it after the show, whether it was Trafalgar, whether it was Wellington, whether it was Nelson, whether it was Waterloo, you know, all these
Napoleon
things.
was defeated at both Waterloo and Trafalgar.
Right, but not by the same person.
Yes, he was.
Was he?
Well, he was about the British, obviously. And
but
one
was
was
it
an
Wellington
admiral.
or was it Nelson?
No. Look, Admiral Lord Horatio Nelson obviously defeated him at sea at Trafalgar.
What were his teeth like?
In 18... well, his teeth were OK, but unfortunately...
He had a great big hole in his side.
He had a hole in his side, that was his shoulder. That's why he had the gammy arm. And he lost an eye, all in battle.
Yeah.
And he was the bravest military man we ever had, because in the heat of the Battle of Trafalgar, he strode up and down on the deck to lead his you know,
so
his
he won the
fleet.
Battle of Trafalgar, which would explain why his Nelson's column is in Trafalgar Square.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Wellington won the other one.
Wellington in 1805 was the Battle of Trafalgar out to sea, and 1815 or 1812, I'm sorry, was the 15, was the Battle of Waterloo on land, which in fact finished off Napoleon forever and established Europe as we knew it until the French and the Germans decided that they were going to run the continent after the Second World War, and we had to fall into place.
Is that it?
Anyway,
let's talk about the Beatles. Why are you so upset about this guy?
Well, as I just said, I just think it's ludicrous that, you know, if you think about it, the biggest cultural change of the 20th century, I don't mean military change, obviously geographically and geopolitically.
Yeah, the fall of the Berlin Wall was quite a big one.
Well, so was the First World War, so was the Second World War, so was the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Right, so now you're going to tell me the Beatles was up there amongst all of those things, are you?
Well, what I'm saying is the biggest cultural shift, probably in the last 400 years, was the advent of the Beatles, because they turned the world from being black and white into colour, and they were responsible for the fall of the Berlin Wall.
How did they turn it from black and white into colour?
Well, because in the post-war era, when Britain was a bombed-out nation, although we won the Second World War, we paid massive reparations in terms of costs to America and everybody else.
The Marshall Plan and all that.
The Marshall Plan, absolutely. And we didn't have enough money to reinvigorate the country. And it really was. You know those old films like Saturday Night, Sunday Morning and all that kind of stuff?
The kitchen sink dramas.
Yeah, kitchen sink dramas.
Yeah.
It was a terrible country to live in until...
They were some great films, though.
Yeah, they did, yeah. But it was a terrible country to live in until about 1959 or 60, when people were going round smoking woodbines, buying half pints of bitter.
Well, they still had ration books in the early 50s, didn't they?
Mike, they had ration books when I was born. Can you believe that? When I was born...
In the 40s. Of course, in the 40s.
In the 40s. For the first 2 years of my life, my mother had a ration book for me. How about that?
Is that why you're so against sweets and
No. Can you believe that my mother was brought up in a city that night after night was bombed by the German Luftwaffe?
Mine was as well.
And exactly. And she could look up, mine was Birkenhead, and she could look up and see the undersides of the German planes and actually see the faces of the bomb aimers in these planes. I mean, this is incredible stuff.
I know.
And we've come through all that now. And what I'm saying is, what are we talking about? Oh, yes, because of the Beatles. And the point is, the Beatles changed the world from being in that gloomy black and white era.
Well, they were part of a decade that changed the world, surely, the 60s, which they was very much the spearhead of.
It started in the 50s.
Yeah, no, sure. But what I'm saying is it was the whole kind of decade of, permissive society becoming something else.
Yeah, but the Beatles created all that.
And what happened at Haight-Ashbury in 68 and all that.
They changed the world, and many of the changes were for the better. And John Lennon and Paul McCartney first played together in 1958 at the Church Fete in Woollerton in Liverpool. And from that moment on, the world changed because of the Beatles. But they were the catalyst for tremendous change. But the change came so fast, Mike, that a lot of the change was for the worse. I do not like the permissive society.
What do you mean?
It's too permissive. I do not like it.
Permissive society is not a phrase that people now use. The permissive society has nothing to do with, how we now live.
Yes, but it was in the 60s.
Well, it was called that then.
No,
because nobody supposedly had sex before marriage. But I mean, if you talk to anybody who was in the Second World War and you believe that nobody had sex before marriage back then, you're up a gum tree because there were plenty of people doing it.
Of course, there were plenty of people doing it. But, when you're apart from your partner for 3 years, obviously you do. But I don't think people had enough respect for their own bodies during the 60s, OK? I think they should have more respect for their own bodies.
So you don't believe in sex before marriage, then?
Well, of course I believe in sex before marriage.
You've never been married.
What I'm saying is the permissive society came about because of Mary Quant, the advent of the pill and all that, and all this came about.
What's it got to do with Mary Quant?
Marie Quant invented the miniskirt. So all of a sudden, men thought that women were available because they were showing more of their legs than they ever had done before.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
No, it's not ridiculous.
Totally bonkers.
It's not bonkers. It's not
People
bonkers.
started having more sex with each other because it became something that they felt wasn't taboo to do.
Because of the pill. I just told you that.
Well, that was partly to do with it. But it was nothing to do with Mary Quant, though.
Of course it was. Mary Quant invented the miniskirt. Women started wearing shorter skirts. Men became more interested in them. There was then pressure on
Men were always interested in women.
Then there was pressure on the medical industry to come up with some way of allowing people to have lots more sex because that was a popular demand.
This is unbelievable. Unbelievable stuff, even from you.
Without having a population explosion, so therefore the birth pill was invented. That was supposed to keep the
birth control pill.
Yeah, that's right, birth control pill. That's supposed to keep the population down.
So what part of it are you not in favour of?
It made us permissive.
Oh, hang on a second. Well, which bit of it are you not in favour of?
I'm not in favour of inter-physical relationships. I don't think...
What does that mean?
I don't. Well, you know what it means. I mean, you know...
I mean people having a lot of partners.
I don't think it's a good thing.
Is that what you mean?
I don't think it's a good thing.
How many partners have you had?
As a result of... what has that got to do with the price of fish?
It's a very relevant question, because it's not like politicians. If you're going to rail on about people being permissive and having too many partners, how many partners you've had
We then
is
had
relevant.
a massive worldwide outbreak.
Was it in double figures?
A massive worldwide outbreak of...
More than 20?
Of gonorrhea.
30?
Right, which got everybody, got loads and loads of people.
Answer me. I feel like Jeremy Paxman is to be Michael Howard.
I am not going to talk to you...
Give us a ballpark figure.
No, I'm not going to talk to you about my intimate life over the years. How many partners have you had then?
You cannot have about 500.
500?
Yeah.
Oh, don't be so ridiculous.
It's not true. No, it's rubbish.
Of course it is.
Anyway, listen, the point is this. If you're going to have a go at other
So if you're going to
people's...
ask a question and you don't expect a serious answer, don't ask the question,
Well,
okay?
if you're going to have a go at people's morality, I think you ought to be able to lay out your... I'm not the one criticising people for being too permissive. I don't criticise people for doing that at all.
The permissive age
people can do whatever they want.
Destroyed a lot of values held by people in this country and human beings around the world, which has reduced them to mere, I would say, mere... almost
vessels.
Alley cats. That's sort of behaviour.
You like turned into Mary Whitehouse overnight or
No,
something?
I haven't turned into Mary Whitehouse.
I don't remember this being the Mike Parry that I first met in New York City. He seemed to be spending an awful lot of time in alleys.
No,
not with cats either.
No, I didn't. No, this is completely untrue. And
we have to return to the New York Welcoming Committee stories.
No. You see, you're getting off the subject now.
I'm not getting off the subject.
I thought you wanted to talk about education at private schools.
I do, because there's a piece... Because you know how much of a snob you are about your so-called public school education.
Yes.
First of all, I take issue with the fact that you said you went to a public school. You've said it many times.
I didn't.
You went to a grant-aided secondary, grammar school, didn't you?
Excuse me. I'll tell you exactly where I went.
You went to a grammar school?
I went to a direct grant grammar school
where
I won a...
It's not a private school.
Excuse me. Where I won a scholarship, okay? And Sorry?
What in?
I won a King's Scholarship, and it was paid for by the county council.
So did you not have to take 11 plus?
I took 11 plus, and I took the entrance exam. Because I did so well in the entrance exam, I got a King's Scholarship.
Well, obviously, you didn't have a history section then, or a Latin section.
I did Latin, and
we've already tested you on Latin,
and everybody else at the school, the parents had to pay because it was now.
Well, you're the only person who had a scholarship to go there.
No, there were about 6 a year out of 60 pupils, about 1/10.
Right.
So anyway, now the point of my story is that the headmaster attended the public schools conference every year. That's the headmasters of all Britain's public schools, which meant that you were officially designated as a public school.
But that's unusual, isn't it? Because if a grant in those days, if it was a grant-aided school, then yes, you could win scholarships to go there. But it wasn't like a public school like Eton or Harrow or Millfield or one of those places where you paid an absolute fortune to send any kids there.
Every parent, bar these King's Scholars, paid for their children to be educated there.
I personally think that public schools, private schools, should be abolished. Right?
I don't. I think there should be loads more of them.
David Cameron has come out and said that he and Sam McCann, as she's known in the media, are going to send their daughter to a state school. Now, I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, because if he's still Prime Minister at that point in time, presumably the girl is going to be, chauffeured around in
didn't Blair claim he sent his children to a state school?
Well, he sent his son Ewan to the Brompton Oratory, which when I was at school, actually, was a kind of, not a sister school to mine, but similar. It was a Catholic grammar school, which is where I went. I went round the corner to Cardinal Vaughan, which is now private. But in those days, both Brompton Oratory and Cardinal Vaughan were state schools,
Yeah, but it's a poshest state school in the country, isn't it, Brompton
but you can get into it as long as you pass the exam.
Yeah, but I think you'll find...
you don't pay any money.
There's a huge demand to get into that school, and it's very selective, the people it takes.
It takes people based upon their academic achievement, but also on whether they're the sort of suitable candidates.
Worse than that, though, is the Education Secretary, Michael Gove.
Yeah.
has also gone down this route of my kids going to a state school. Now, his wife, Sarah Vine, writes a column in the Daily Mail.
Yeah.
And you know, it gets various reviews and all that. But what I found was extraordinary was the lead item in her column, whenever she last wrote it, last Thursday or something like that, said, why I've chosen to send my child to a state school, like as though, you know, that she's done something incredibly magnanimous.
Well, these people don't live in the real world.
I mean,
you know, they can choose whether to send their kids to private school or not because they're loaded.
93% of kids in this country go to state schools.
I'd like to send my kids to a private school in Sussex, right? Do you know how much it costs?
It costs about 30 grand a year.
Yeah, more than that, just for primary school.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Well, they are, you see.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Now, if parents can afford to send their children to a private school, they should, because it's their choice. That's not a problem.
No, my belief is that if they did away with all private schools, the state schools would get better, everybody would mix more,
they wouldn't,
and there wouldn't be any more of this class warfare that goes on, which people like you perpetuate because you're a snob.
No, let me tell you this. The reason why most politicians of all persuasions want to get rid of private schools and don't want any more grammar schools, yes, they do, is because the state education system in this country is so rubbish, it's so poor, it's so tied up in knots by teachers' unions and educationalists who are still looking at books written by Lenin and Marx on how to educate children. Not Lennon and McCartney, Lenin and Marx on how to educate their children. That's the reason why we produce more dumbbells in this country than any other country in Europe, right?
Yeah, it's a very convincing argument.
No, I've got a friend who's in the business of renting out property to students, right?
That's you.
And what happens is these students write in the April to say, I'd like to take up a room, please, in one of your properties.
Highly expensive properties.
And let me tell you, you want to see the English that these kids... I mean, they can't spell. They can't put punctuation in. They can't enunciate anything. They're as thick as planks when they arrive.
Went to state school?
Because you know where they're coming from. Because they're saying, I've got, like 11 GCSEs, all at D level, from my school, which is, sort of...
King's School, Chester?
No. Something like Bush Street Kids Secondary Mod, and now known as, elite comprehensive or whatever. It's all a racket. It's a racket.
Absolute cobblers. What a useless argument that is. Possibly one of your worst ever. Mike Porky Parry will be back towards the end of the week on Thursday night.